As the news cycle starts to slow down around the NHL, let's start looking at the 25-26 season for the Carolina Hurricanes and maybe look at some potential breakouts this year. I think there's not going to be one, not two, but potentially three guys that are really going to shout for the Hurricanes in 25-26.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everyday for making this your first listen of the day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers, also the co-host of the Surgecast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all of my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. Got a fun Wednesday show for you guys as we get to look at three potential breakout players this year for the Carolina Hurricanes, and Logan Stankoven, Jackson Blake, and Alexander Nikishin, and how I think these guys are going to perform this season for the Canes. But before we jump into all of that, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONAHL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, when it comes to this upcoming season for the Carolina Hurricanes, there's not a lot of necessarily young guys outside of the core they already have. Maybe not a lot of newer faces that, are they going to break out and stuff like that? Most of the new faces have already been in the league well enough to where you really couldn't put, Nikolai Ehlers or Kendra Miller here and stuff like that. We've seen Seth Jarvis have back-to-back great seasons that already will be considered breakouts, back-to-back over 60-point seasons and stuff like that. And, of course, we know with the goaltending situation, those guys have been there for a while. So it kind of shortens the list a little bit of potential breakout guys who I think could make runs this upcoming season for the Carolina Hurricanes. You could maybe say Andrei Svechnikov, but he's been with the Hurricanes for a good bit now and is already on, in the middle of one of his first big contracts. So we're going to look at Stankoven, Blake, and Nikishin. And yes, it is funny enough for the fact that these guys are 21, 22, 23 years old and are going, into different phases of their current upcoming season with the Carolina Hurricanes. But we're going to start with we're going to start with Logan Stankoven. And this is a guy who's going to be playing his first full season with the Carolina Hurricanes this year, because when you look over his entire career so far in the NHL, and it's very limited, all things considered, because this would be his third season in the league. Now, he did play in 24 games for the Dallas Stars back in 23-24, where he got 6 goals, 14 points, was a +10, average over 14 minutes and 40 seconds of ice time, did have 1 power play goal, 2 power play points as well. No game winners, but did have 11.8 shooting percentage and all of that. Now, last year, he did split time between the Stars and the Hurricanes, where he had 59 games with the Stars, 9 goals, 29 points, was a +2, 1 power play goal, 6 power play points, and did average over 15 minutes and 6 seconds with having 4 game winners on 6.1% shooting. And then he finished off the regular season with the Carolina Hurricanes with 19 games played, 5 goals, 9 points, was a -3, did average over 15 minutes and 4 seconds, had a power play goal with 2 power play points, a game winner, and 10.9% shooting percentage. Now, when you look at his playoff numbers so far in his 2 seasons in the league, 19 games for the Stars in 23-24, 3 goals, 8 points, was a +6, average 1601 minutes per game, 8.3 shooting percentage. With the Hurricanes, 15 games played, 5 goals, 8 points, was a -1, 2 power play goals, 3 power play points, 15 minutes and 33 seconds of ice time, 2 game winners with a 20.8 shooting percentage. And funny enough, Logan Stankoven in back-to-back years to start off his career, Western Conference Final, Eastern Conference Final. Not bad all in all for the Kamloops native to basically go his first 2 playoff runs ever. Both of them were in the conference finals, one East and one West, respectively. And, did put the same amount of points, but just swapped his goals and assist numbers. But when you look at Stankoven, he's going into the last year of his ELC, but we all know he's going to get that 8-year, $6 million that kicks in next summer, which is, same long-term contract as Jackson Blake's. The AAV is a little bit different. But this is the first full season for Stankoven where, for me, I think this is where he's going to be able to just go into camp and not have to worry about, am I going to be here long-term or am I going to get shipped out? This is probably going to be his first full NHL camp where he just has the entire season knowing he's going to be in one place. Because, like I said, his first year in the league, he was down in the AHL playing for the Texas Stars for a long time, won the MVP and all that before he went to play for Dallas. And then this past season, he was with the Stars and then with the Hurricanes. So he hasn't really played a full season in one spot. So I think when you look at a guy like Logan Stankoven, who's really put himself into a spot of where the Hurricanes went and got him plus 4 draft picks for Mikko Rantanen, and then immediately that summer signed him to an extension that doesn't kick in until next year, which is an $8 million per season, which all in all is a fantastic contract if you're the Carolina Hurricanes, even for Logan Stankoven. For a guy who's not even 23, is already locked up for the next 9 seasons, including this last year of his ELC with the Canes, the team that didn't even draft him. They got him, and they're like, we like you enough that we want to keep you here. So I think if there is one guy on this roster who I think is going to be a bona fide breakout player for this team, it's going to be Logan Stankoven. Now, with Jackson Blake and Alexander Nikishin, as we go on the show, we'll talk about reasons why they're going to break out. For me, I think the number one guy to have that breakout is Stankoven. He's already shown that he can score goals. He can put up the points. He can be very dynamic on 5-on-5 play, no matter where he's at in the lineup, first, second, third line, and even on the power plays, where if you put him in the power play 1 unit or in the power play 2 unit, he can put up points. He's shown that he can do it. Like I said, he already has 3 power play goals and 10 power play points in 102 games. Very limited amount of numbers and very limited number of games, but it's still pretty impressive for a guy who averages 15 minutes a game. And he already has 5 game winners in his career. Of course, that's all those came in this past season where he did play 70 games in total, but still not bad overall when you look at a guy like that who had 38 points last year and still building his way up. So, yeah, while the number isn't, otherworldly, I mean, 38 points in your rookie season is not bad for a guy like Stankoven. And we saw what he can do in the playoffs for the Hurricanes. He got 5 goals in the playoffs, got multiple, got a game winner in that game 4 against, the Florida Panthers to force game 5 in the Eastern Conference Final. But he fits the mold of the Hurricanes so well to where he is a Carolina Hurricane. Like, he was born into the system, and I think that's why Eric Tulsky and the team was like, you fit this team well, you fit what we're looking for, and we know that you can be a future core asset to this team, and that's what he's going to be for the Hurricanes for the next, through 2034, is a guy that's going to be part of this core for a very long time. So I think if you look for a guy who could have that breakout year, is Stankoven. Like I said, it helps too that he's going to be with the same team all year. He knows what the Hurricanes want out of him. The Hurricanes know what they can get out of him. Plus, there's still a lot more to his game that hasn't really been touched yet. Because, like I say, he's only been in the league for technically, a season and a quarter, if that. So I mean, he just shed his rookie status off of last season, so he's going to his second full season in the NHL. But like I said, it's the first where he's not having to worry about starting in the AHL or being traded. Is just, I know I'm going to be a Carolina Hurricane. Am I going to be top 6? Am I going to be top 9? Where am I going to be on the power play unit? That's all what it comes down to. And I think if there's someone who's going to take that next step for the Hurricanes next year, it is definitely going to be Logan Stankoven. And I'm very excited to see what Stank can do in terms of, if he's, where he's placed at, what his ice time is going to look like, and what his goals, assists, and points, and just his overall impact on the team is going to be for the 25-26 season. So if there's one guy to keep an eye out for an impact breakout year, it is going to be Logan Stankoven. Now, that being said, who is the other guy who just signed an 8-year contract that's going to be with Stankoven for the next good while? Well, that's Jackson Blake, and why I think he's going to have a great sophomore season after a stellar rookie season. We'll talk about it here in a second on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. We've all been there. Logging on early and waiting for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endless scrolling trying to find the best deal? Game Time's Zone Deals picks the best seats in your section for you. Worried about what happens if plans change? Well, the Game Time guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and more. So just take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked on Hurricanes, your team every day. Now, we talked about him on the Monday show for a good bit of it because of the fact that he just signed a very nice contract extension with the Carolina Hurricanes that sees him through the 2033-34 season, and that is Jackson Blake. Talk about a week for a guy like him going in, has a great rookie season, 17 goals, 34 points, and then that summer, lock up a contract for 8 years, which, all things when it comes down to what the AAV could have been, it should have been 5.625. In retrospect, it's 5.117, which is still pretty good for the fact that you got that deferred money. But he's still going to get his full 5.7. It's just, a lot of, deferred money and all that stuff changes around. But even then, even with a cap hit of 5.11, is still pretty good for Jackson Blake. And it's very good for the Carolina Hurricanes for the fact that they're making an investment on a guy who was drafted 109th overall by this team back in 2021 and has already made an impact early on with the Carolina Hurricanes. You look at last season, like I said, 17 goals and 34 points in 80 games, was a plus 10 last year. And this is what really set Jackson Blake up really want to get this contract. How about 5 power play goals and 7 power play points in his rookie season? Not bad, putting himself within the top 5 for the Hurricanes in power play goals. Did all this while averaging 13 minutes and 51 seconds. And that's between first line, second line, third, and even the fourth line. And he played both power play units. So even with the fact that his time on ice dipped under 14 minutes, he was still an impactful player for the Carolina Hurricanes. How about 142 shots? He had a 12% shooting percentage as a rookie, finished top 10 in goals and top 10 in rookie points last year across the NHL. Not bad overall. And also, how about this cherry on top? 6 game-winning goals, putting him within the top 5 of the Carolina Hurricanes as well. That is what you call a phenomenal rookie season for a guy like Jackson Blake, who also fits this mold. Fast, great two-way game, and he's a rookie. Like, he's going to get better, and that's why the Hurricanes went and gave him that contract extension. The kid is 21 years old, already has locked up a deal that sees him staying in Carolina through 2034. That's how much they really enjoy this kid's game. And I think he's only going to get better for the Hurricanes. How about for the playoffs? 3 goals, 6 points in 15 games for his first ever postseason in the NHL. 2 power play goals, 16 minutes and 55 seconds of ice time, which he did see a good bit of top 6 and then drop down to the bottom 6 later on. Unfortunately, no game winners, but he had 26 shots in those 15 games with a 11.5 shooting percentage. I mean, when you play almost 17 minutes a game, you add 2 power play goals to already in the playoffs to what you already had 5 in the regular season, and then you add another 3 goals to the 17 you had, and you add 6 points to the 34 you had. Yes, I know it's 34 regular season points and 6 playoff points, but it's still pretty good to get a cumulative 40 points in your rookie season with at least a cumulative of 7 power play goals. That's pretty dang impressive for a rookie skater who was the Hobey Baker finalist for North Dakota. Of course, you heard me talk about this on the Monday show, but it bears repeating. You have a Hody Baker finalist getting 60 points for North Dakota. He plays in one game the previous season after signing his contract because the team is already making it in. They want to get some debuts done. Comes into that camp. I don't think anyone really thought, who was going to make it out of camp. Could have been Unger Sorum, could have been Riley Nadeau, could have been Jackson Blake, Scott Morrow, all of these guys that people were looking at for prospects. Like, all right, who's going to break into the Hurricanes lineup for 24-25? And that guy was Jackson Blake, someone who people had definitely in their top 5 of prospects. Could have been 3rd, 4th, maybe even 5th in terms of that. It was just like their prospect pool. Of course, with Nikishin being over the KHL, nothing to do about that. But they still had a pretty good number of guys within the system that were going to be in North America, at least for the Hurricanes and even the Chicago Wolves. And it was Jackson Blake who ended up winning out of that. Starts off in the top 6, slowly moves his way up into the first line, and played there for a good bit of the season. Then as the season went on, did kind of drop down to like the 3rd, 4th line, started on the top 6 in the playoffs, kind of slid down a little bit farther as the postseason went on. But overall, not a bad rookie season for a guy like Blake. And like I said, that is why you see the Hurricanes be like, we drafted you in 4th round in 2021. You played really well your rookie season. We know you're just scratching the surface of your talent. We are going to invest in you for a long time. We're not going to wait until your ELC expires and then we have you as an RFA. We got to figure it out from there. We are going to extend you right this minute. And that's what they did. And the fact that they beat the gun of these 8-year contracts that are going to be outlawed in the next CBA next September 2026, and also beat out the clock on the deferred money. So yeah, they could have been paying Jackson Blake $5.6 million over the next 8 seasons starting next year. Well, technically it would have been 7 if they wait until next year, but instead they get the 8 years. So you beat one part of the new CBA where now it's not 6 or 7, it's still the 7 or 8 range. And then you beat up the outlawed deferral money. Because deferral money, you're not allowed to defer contracts starting next season. And the Hurricanes are like, all right, we see your 7 or 8 year deals are going out the window. Now it's 6 or 7. And your deferred rule is coming into effect. Well, we're going to beat that early and give it to this kid. And that's what they did. They essentially beat out 2 outlawed rules that are going to come up in the next CBA and gave it to Jackson Blake. And that's why you're looking at him getting 8 by $5.11 million instead of 5.6 for his next upcoming contract. And it's 8 years long term, not just the 7. So just like Logan Stankoven, where you got him for 9 seasons, now you got Jackson Blake for another 9 years as well. And both of their new contracts don't kick in until next year. And the thing too is, both of these guys combined make less than $12 million per season. That is some fancy work for the Carolina Hurricanes to get Stankoven to $6 million and then Jackson Blake to $5.11. You're talking $11.11 million between these 2 guys for the next 8 seasons, starting next year through 2033-34. That is some good work for the Carolina Hurricanes. It's just like the Stankoven deal. I think the Blake deal works very well for Blake and the Kings. He gets the security that he's going to be in Carolina for basically a good while of his career. And the Hurricanes are going to be vesting in a young guy that they drafted who they think is going to fit really well with the core that they have. That includes, like I said, Nikishin, that we're going to talk about in segment 3. Also Seth Jarvis. You got Stankoven and Blake. You got Brother Nadeau on the wings. And then you still have guys like Andrei Svechnikov and Sebastian Aho who aren't that far ahead of them in terms of their age. They're still within that middle range of young guys to the veteran status. But with Blake, first full season in the league, you're kind of getting used to what it means to be an AHLer, what does it mean to be a pro hockey player, and you go out and you are top 10 in goal scoring and in points. I would say a very underrated and underappreciated guy in terms of the league focusing on their rookies. Because all you hear was, like celebrating, what's he going to do? What's, Will Smith, all these other guys around the league. And then it's like, but you've got Jackson Blake, who's having an underrated season for the Carolina Hurricanes and someone who should definitely been, I think, talked about a lot more. Yeah, he didn't finish in the top 3 for Calder finalists, but I think there should have been some type of conversation to be had there. But honestly, though, if there's a guy who's going to have a breakout sophomore season to build off his 34 points and someone who I think is going to have a 45, maybe 50-point season, that will be Jackson Blake. Now, we have one guy to talk about. I know a lot of people are very excited to see what he can do in his first full season in the AHL and in North America, and that's Alexander Nikishin. So stick around, and we'll talk about him here in a second on a Wednesday edition of Locked on Hurricanes. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked on Hurricanes, your team every day. So we talk about Logan Stankoven, we talk about Jackson Blake. Now we're going to talk about Alexander Nikishin, who I think is going to have honestly a breakout season for the Carolina Hurricanes, because it's going to be his first pro season in North America that's not including just the playoffs. So it's kind of like a no-brainer here that I think this guy's going to have a breakout. When you look at Alexander Nikishin, who is on the last year of his 2-year ELC just because of age and all that stuff, he will be an RFA. He's going to get a contract either with relatively the next few weeks, or it could be next summer. Either way, the Hurricanes hold his rights, stuff like that. He's going to make $925,000, and the 69th overall pick from the 2020 draft is going to be very exciting for the Carolina Hurricanes in 25-26. The 6'4", 216, 23-year-old is going to be a monster for the Carolina Hurricanes this coming season, especially for the fact that you're looking at the most successful defenseman in the KHL history. We look at a guy who had 55 points back in 22-23, 56 in 23-24, and then 46 in 24-25. In the last 2 seasons, he was the captain of SKA St. Petersburg over the last couple of years. And the fact you look at a guy who had 102 points alone within the last 2 seasons, it's crazy. And then you had another 55 on top of that. The playoffs, how about 4 goals and 8 points in 16 games in his first KHL playoffs with SKA St. Petersburg in 2023? 1 goal in 5 games in 23-24, and then 2 goals, 3 points in 4 games this past playoffs. Now, he didn't get to play any games for the Hurricanes last year because by the time he got over here and all that stuff, he missed regular season games, but he did get his first ever playoff point. It was an assist in the 4 games that he played, with one of them coming against the Washington Capitals and the few that he had against the Florida Panthers. But the thing with Nikishin is he's fast, he's big, his offensive game is insane. He's got a massive slap shot. Defensively, he's really great, like I said. He knows how to hip check perfectly. He is the old school hip check guy. And the fact that he's 23, one of the greatest defensemen to ever come out of the KHL, is really saying something for a guy who's 23. And he was the most highly touted prospect in the Hurricane system, and still technically is, because he hasn't really fully graduated to the Hurricane system yet, because he hasn't really played a regular season game. He's played 4 playoff games, does have a point, but this is a guy who is it's going to be a learning process for him in his rookie season in the NHL, for the fact this is his first time playing in North America at all. He's probably going to be playing for the Hurricanes without a doubt. So I think that, in terms of a breakout, I still think rather if it's 30, 35 points, I still consider it a breakout for a guy who's never really played in North America, has never played in the AHL in a regular season game at least. Now, yes, he has played in the playoffs. He looked pretty decent as he went on through the playoffs, but there's still going to be a learning process for him, in terms of not just playing on a different ice sheet, but language and all that stuff. That's going to be a struggle. Thankfully, he does have, Andrei Svechnikov and also Pierre Kochetkov on the team to help him out as well. Of course, the Hurricanes have also drafted a lot of other Russians that will help in terms of all of that. But you look at what Nikishin can do. We're not sure where exactly he's going to play in terms of what defensive pairing it's going to be, whose defensive partner is going to be, but hockey language is hockey language. It's going to work out fine. I think this is going to be a very exciting time to watch Alexander Nikishin and see what he can do in his rookie season. For the Hurricanes, like I said, if it's 30 points, 35 at the most, even if he hits 40, I think 40 in a rookie season for a guy who's never played in the system, never played in North America. I still think 40 for me is the ceiling for a rookie season for Alexander Nikishin. I would not be upset if it's 30 to 35. I mean, we're talking about a defenseman here. It takes a little bit longer to get used to play in this system overall for the Hurricanes and just getting used to the league. So 30, 35, I would not be like, oh, what's going on with Alexander Nikishin? Like, I want people to relax. 30 or 35 points for Nikishin in his first season in North America. It's still a pretty good season. I would still consider that a breakout year for a guy in his circumstances. If he hits 40 or more, then hey, now you're playing with house money, and you're feeling pretty good about yourself. And I think that's where you're looking at for the Carolina Hurricanes with Nikishin. Like I said, you got the guy with the size, 6'4", almost 200 pounds, ridiculous speed, hard slap shot, plays great defense, can hip check like no one else. Just an overall great two-way game, but the offensive awareness is on another level. And now you're putting him in a room where Tim Gleason is your defensive coach, which, I mean, you cannot go wrong with having Tim Gleason as your defense coach. And then you're adding a guy like Jacob Slavin, who's going to be a Carolina Hurricane lifer because his new contract kicks in this year, which is another 8-year deal. And then you're looking at, Jalen Chatfield, who, congratulations to Chatty. He just got married this past weekend. Congratulations to him and his wife. And then who's made himself into a top 4 defenseman with the Hurricanes. You got Sean Walker, who's grown over his first year with the Canes. I think he had a very underrated season last year. And I think his second season with the Canes is going to be impactful. You got Shane Gostisbehere back on his second of his 3-year deal and on his second stint with the team. I'm really excited to see what he can do. So you have a good core of guys around you that's going to make you better. And I think that's what's really exciting in terms of that. And the fact you also got Keandre Miller, who, is still kind of, trying to take his game to the next level. But Nikishin's going to be in a great room with a great coach in Gleason. Then you got the leadership guys of Slavin, who's the assistant captain, and you got Jalen Chatfield, who's grown in his zone within the Hurricanes organization. And then you got, Ghost and Walker, who's gotten better over their time as well. And let's not forget, too, your head coach is Rod Brendamore. If there's a guy that's going to help teach you hockey in North America, this is the guy to do it. So I think the Hurricanes have really put Nikishin in a good spot to be like, hey, we're bringing you over. This is your last year of your ELC. We're going to get a contract figure out, but we're going to just ease you in, not put too much pressure on you. We got a great group of guys on the defense room, amazing coaches, amazing support staff in the front office. Nikishin's going to be fine. I think this is going to be a very fun season to watch for the 23-year-old Russian, who is going to have a really great, I think, a great NHL career. And the best place to do it right now for him is Carolina. And I think just with the group that he has in the defense room, the coaching, front office, the way he plays, I think this is going to be a very huge season for him in his actual rookie season in North America for the Hurricanes. So if it's 30 or 35 points, I would not be upset with it. I would consider that a success for first year on North American ice. And if he gets over 40, hey, now you're feeling even better about yourselves. And now you're really looking at a great season overall for Nikishin and the Carolina Hurricanes. So those are my 3 guys. Logan Stankoven, Jackson Blake, and Alexander Nikishin. I think these will be the 3 breakout players for the Carolina Hurricanes in 25-26. If you're on the YouTube side of things, let me know in the comments. Do you agree with these 3, or do you think there are other guys on this roster that might have breakout seasons? And if you're on social media, hit me up at OneTrueZach. Let me know what you think about the potential breakout guys for the 25-26 season. It should be very exciting, and I cannot wait until October 9th for the home opener against the New Jersey Devils. But guys, this will be the one-day edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for making your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go check out Locked On NHL podcast, where there is no offseason. It'll be bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter the most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. If you want to keep up with me, I'm at OneTrueZach on X. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky, the Zachary Martin, where you can click the link tree in my bios to check out all of my written content at thehockeywriters.com. If you want to check out my other podcast, it is the Search Cast on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. If you want to check out Locked On Hurricanes, we're on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcast. make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review because I might just read it on the show. Now, for YouTube, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Make sure to subscribe, hit the bell notifications, don't miss a show. Hit the thumbs up, tell me if you like the show as well. Share with other Canucks to become everydayers just like you. But hope everyone enjoyed the Wednesday of Locked On Hurricanes. Enjoy your Wednesday, and until next time, as always, let's go Canes.